Pop this perma clutch off, give him a good inspection, see if we need any parts, and if not, it can transfer to the other engine. So all we're going to do is pop these 6 bolts out, lay him face down, and then we'll take these bolts off and then start pulling it apart. See how it's on these square guides. It's heavy and you got to pull it out fairly square. Bolts. Just take the nuts off and the bushings off. Now we lift this top off. PTO, pull him off. Looks good. Springs. Pull him out. Our chicken discs, boy, them look brand new. I think that literally looks brand new. I need both hands. Now we're on the traction side. He looks brand new. There's a little gold out there, so there's some heat at some point. Little burn spot that's fairly normal. Boy, everything looks brand new. Everything looks gorgeous. I don't think I'm putting any money into this clutch. That is really, really, really good. And now just put everything back the way you just took it out. That's why I like to stand it, flip it over, because now you just flip it back in. And so we would just flip him back in, do a disc plate, except I need both hands. And we will get him back together, get the flywheel moved to the other engine, and go from there. All right, so I got the flywheel off. I just got it sitting on the bucket there. My table's kind of full. So now I'll just put it back together in right on top of that bucket, and either everything passed inspection, so we'll put it together, or your new parts come in, whatever. And so now we'll put it together and get it ready to go onto the engine. So we're gonna stack everything up just the exact way we took it apart. That's why, like I said, you take it out, stack it up, so when you go back together, you just flop it down. Put it all together in here, and then we lift it out of here and then get the flywheel onto the engine. This big intermediate plate, remember you had them springs for your PTO, so we want to get these cups facing up. You don't have the cups on this back side, so there is only one way to go. The nice thing about this PTO gear is if you put it on backwards, it's going to look backwards, and you got the snap ring on the inside. So you'd look at it and you'd be like, hey, with the snap ring there, I can't get the shaft into it. And you're going to have this hub facing out at them fingers. So it just kind of, the shape of the gear goes into the traction clutch gear. So it looks, so you can see your bigger shaft for your PTO and your smaller shaft for your traction. Everything kind of makes sense there. Easy peasy. So everything's together. So I just spin these nuts down. You're not hundreds of pounds. You're talking with your ratchet wrench, just spin them down until they snug up. You'll feel the clutch assembly kind of suck together a little bit. And by sucking it together a little bit, we can lift it out and we can put the flywheel back on and we can reinstall it on the tractor without worrying about anything falling out of place. Once in a blue moon, them discs on the very bottom can slide out of place if you leave everything loose and you lift it out of there, and then you jiggle and wiggle trying to get it back into the flywheel. So that's my tip there. Or if you're one of the guys that you do your settings on the flywheel like this, then just put a couple door wedges or something underneath the fingers, the traction clutch fingers, to compress that to keep everything in place. So then you can reinstall everything and nothing slides. All right, so we got our tool installed. You notice a small wrench, not a breaker bar. This only goes to 20 pound-feet of torque. You put these to 30 inch pounds, not foot pounds, inch pounds, meaning you're using a little wrench like this, and you're only going, there's 50, you're only going 30 inch pounds. That is literally just a couple pound-feet of torque. That is, I mean, 30 inch pounds of effort is this. So you put these to 30 inch pounds. That preloads your PTO plate. Then you got the finger here, the stud, the jam nut, and the adjusting bolt. And it's a game of patience. You know, you can sneak in with some needle nose and kind of turn it, get it close to where the finger's just touching, then pull the finger out quick, lock it, see how close it stayed, if it moved at all. The goal is to get, if I come from the bottom side, that little tick. That's your goal, is just to get that little tiny tick on all three. Then we're going to take the fingers out, mark them, you know, 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3. Then we're going to release these adjusting bolts. And we're going to come over to these bolts. We don't have the jam nut on yet. We're going to come over to this bolt. We're going to finger tighten it up, tighten it finger tight. But you're going to try and rotate this stud to make sure that the stud is engaged back here. And so you pay attention. If one of these is really short, the bolt isn't locked in on the head. Then you're going to go to 70 inch pounds. 70 inch pounds. Again, not a lot of torque. So you're going to go to 70 on all three. Then you're going to come back and you're going to go to 90 on all three. And then we jam nut them. Hold that nut when you bring in the jam nut to maintain position. Some of these specs are a little bit different for each model. The shim pack here under the tool is different for different models, different serial numbers. So consult the book for your tractor to make sure you got the right shim pack on the tool and the right torques for the clutch. Everything said and done, pin comes back in the PTO, cotter pin, then lock tight all your big bolts on the outside and torque these to 35 pounds. Now the 2-speed. So there ain't a whole lot to it. I didn't show taking it apart because you literally just have 3 bolts that come through the carrier into the hub, and then 6 bolts that hold the back plate to that other brake. Depending on your model and serial number, because this is different, the theory is the same, the number of discs are different, and the thickness of discs are different. So you have to go by the book and you mic them out. What we're looking for on these brass ones is thickness, and these are out of spec. They are below spec, and I think here is a good example. At first glance, you're like, gosh, that looks nice. You can see all the oil grooves, but you can see up here, it's getting a little thin. The oil grooves kind of disappear. So use your micrometer, check their thickness, see how they go. Same with these plates, these discs, same with these plates and these plates. So the metal plates are well within spec. The brass plates are out of spec. Fairly simple. Just like the perma clutch, just pay attention to how things come apart. You got your aluminum piston here. We'll pop him out and put new packings in that. Same with this piston, we'll put new packings in there. You got the bevel washers. So you can take just a piece of pipe, cut it in half, bring it down. So this is for a lot of our transmission stuff, this size here. So we'll get a smaller one for this one. These are under a lot of pressure. Unless you're in a press or have a rebar or ready rod assembly holding these washers down, do not attempt to take that snap ring off. A lot of this one, I'm kind of taking this one for granted because it's a lot of you get what you see kind of deal. That there's the assembly and disassembly, you can figure that out. On a John Deere planetary of anything other than the axles, any other planetary you run into in a John Deere transmission, if you take this apart, if you want to inspect the needle bearings in here, you pull this shaft, you take this assembly apart, you will look for a timing mark on every gear. John Deere planetaries in their transmissions are always timed. It doesn't matter if it's your 2-speed on your synchro, your input planetary, or they call it a high-low planetary on a 15-speed, or the planetary packs on a 15-speed or 8-speed or 15-speed inside. Always look for them timing marks. All you wanted to do was pop these shafts out to check your needle bearings, and you did not time it. You just put it back together, and a few $100 later, you shell out your 2-speed or your planetary because you're out of time. So you have to look for that. So, yes. Then you can take, I'll have to double check in the book, but off the top of my head, I thought we used to take this out, this hose out, and if you put air with a rubber tip here, you'll run the clutch or the brake or the clutch, and if you go here, you'll run the other. So you'll hear it boom, boom, each time you pump some air. So you pump some air and hold air pressure at 50 pounds. You don't need 150 yet. At 50 pounds of air, you'll hear the piston boom, and you'll hear, there should be don't be surprised if you hear a tiny little bit of air leak. That's okay, but you shouldn't just hear a hissing or howling kind of deal. But a little tiny air hiss is okay. And then you know that you're good to go. That's after you get it all assembled. Don't try and do air like here, because you'll just pop that piston out, and then you got to put it back together. After it's all assembled, hit it with air on them 2 ports to see how the clutch and the brake pump, pump. And then put it back in the tractor on the back of the clutch. This clutch operating piston housing. We have, you got a lot going on right here. We have I guess I could have rolled it the other way, couldn't I? You've got your piston for your PTO right there. Right here under this plug is what is called a lube reduction valve. Pull that out and give it an inspection. Make sure it's clean, it's not scored, there's no nicks in it, and that it moves nice and smooth in that bore. What that lube reduction valve does is when you push in the clutch, it dumps lube oil to sump, because normally what's going on is you've got lube oil coming up your drive shaft, getting pumped into the clutch. And that's why these clutches are so great, because they're submersed in hydraulic oil while they're being operated on. Or operated on while they're operating. When you push the clutch pedal in, it kills that lube oil circuit. If that lube reduction valve is sticking, your symptoms will be you push the clutch in and you'll have a hard time shifting, or the tractor will just never quite completely stop. So if you have a quad range and you have clutch symptoms of not fully releasing, then also inspect that lube reduction valve after you've rebuilt the perma clutch. And then while we're here, we're obviously going to pop our traction clutch. We'll put a new throw out bearing, pop the piston out, put new seals. Same on the PTO, new throwout bearing, pop the piston, put in seals. Then we got a new bearing for the front of the big PTO gear right there. That bearing goes there. So when I get the 2-speed together, go through that housing, swap the bearing, then we can get this housing all back together and then start working on our clutch valve housing, but get all that housing and stuff locked up to here. Yes, a lot of technical data on this video, but that's okay.